We are in the art of no. We're in the art of no. So we talked about how to own your nose, and then we walked it back, from, okay, that's a hard limit, but can we do something that will meet both of our needs? Great. If sometimes we also need to use force because someone is hurting themselves or another, or you are responsible for that person. So we have a basic division here, and this is the division of protective versus punitive force, protective versus punitive force. So all up to this point, my whole idea of, compassionate, connected, consensual, is as long as it's not hurting anyone, everybody's business is their own business. Hey, you do what you want in the privacy of your own home. That's not any of my business. When it begins hurting someone, then well, we are all in this together. Now we are in the realm of negotiations, whether we wanted to be or not. So we have to use force protectively. Over the history of our hominid ancestors, we have built into us this kind of tit for tat thing. That can be great in things like financial decisions, in things like negotiations, right? In legal documents and things like that, where we are working toward fairness. The problem becomes is that that instinct can easily flop over into a thing called retributive justice, retributive justice, where it feels like if you hurt the other person, that somehow balances the scales. And the real problem, at least in this theory, this worldview of nonviolence that I propose to you, is that that actually doesn't balance anything out. It just adds more suffering to the world. Okay, so we know this in terms of war. You eventually have to come into peace negotiations, or you end up in total ongoing war that just ravages the lives and land of people. War as stopping violence, perhaps there's a use for that. There are certain tactics by which violence must be opposed. That would be an example of protective force. When you get into, well, they did this much, so we're going to do this much back, that often causes these ongoing cycles of violence that no one ever feels any relief. And usually it just leads to escalation. Punishment is basically a useless paradigm. What are some examples? What you'll find when you punish kids through harsh tactics that are intended to cause pain, it actually sets their nervous system up into usually kids are acting out because they either don't know the boundary or they're dysregulated in some way. When you try to hurt them, often the boundary remains unclear. We talked about this a couple classes ago in terms of like asking for what you want. Often the boundary remains unclear and you've added dysregulation to their system. So you get more of what you don't want. What's another example? Well, you can look this one up, but it is the recidivism of our prison industrial methodology, which is highly dysregulating to the nervous system, sometimes causing physical or psychological injury. The idea that we're putting people in prison to hurt them in order to get more of the behavior we want doesn't actually, that's not a data-driven proposition. So that's punitive use of force. As you can tell, I think punitive use of force is completely idiotic, just completely idiotic. It gives you more of what you don't want. And it also feels right. It feels right because of some instinctual defaults that we have in our body. Okay, well, what do we have on the other side? We have the protective use of force. This is going to be the art of our invoking our consequences, is the art of using protective force. For now, you can just think about, am I using force with an intent to hurt the person into acting the way I want them to? Or am I using force in an attempt to protect this person or those who they might harm? Okay, so just a little quick one on the protective use of force.